The plate hit Penny's chest with a wet slap. Whipped cream slid down her apron in slow, obscene streaks. Laughter detonated across Ridgeview Diner, sharp, drunken, merciless. Phones rose like weapons. And Penny M. Nelson, 25, froze cheeks burning hotter than the grill behind her while Macy Navarro lifted her phone and smiled for the flash. From the shadowed corner booth, one man stood. No one breathed. Because everyone in the room knew exactly who wore that steel gray suit at 2 a.m. John A. Hall. He looked at May, voice low enough to cut glass. Put the phone down. And apologize. The bell above the diner door jingled small, ordinary, ignored on any other night. The air was thick with burnt coffee, fryer grease, and the sour ghost of spilled beer. For Penny M. Nelson, it was just another late shift in Ridgeview Diner, the one place in town where criminals, cops, and politicians all pretended the others didn't exist. She moved between the booths with practiced exhaustion, refilling coffees she couldn't afford herself, smiling the smile that died somewhere behind her eyes years ago. 25 looked 35 under these flickering fluorescents. Double shifts, overdue rent, an apartment that smelled like damp regret. She told herself the same lie every night. Asterisk. Just survive today. Asterisk. In the back corner, where the light barely reached, sat John A. Hall and 4 of his men. Immaculate suits that cost more than Penny made in a month. They never spoke above a murmur. They never tipped small. The staff pretended not to notice them. The regulars pretended not to be afraid. Everyone felt the gravity anyway, like sitting too close to a loaded gun. Then the door burst open again and the temperature changed. Macy Navarro swept in with her pack designer heels clicking, diamonds flashing under the neon, laughter already weaponized. 23 and untouchable, daughter of the man who owned half the skyline and bought the other half with City Hall favors. They claimed the longest booth like it was a throne, phones out, filming the vintage trash aesthetic for their stories. Penny approached, pen ready. What can I get started for you? May didn't even glance up at first. Bring us the dessert menu, apron girl, she drawled, and make it fast. Some of us have lives. Her friends snickered. One filmed Penny's name tag. Penny. Like the coin. How fitting. They ordered off menu. Complained the coffee tasted like poverty. When Penny politely refused, comped champagne. We don't serve alcohol after 2. May's smile turned razor thin. Oh, honey, she said, loud enough for the entire diner, you're already serving. It's just not on the menu. More laughter. Then May scooped a heaping plate of whipped cream pie, stood, and shoved it straight into Penny's chest. The diner roared. May angled her phone. Say hi to your 15 minutes, little servant. The world narrowed to white streaks on black apron and the wet sound of her own heartbeat. Then, a single chair scraped back, slow and deliberate. Conversation died mid-sentence. John A. Hall rose. 6'3" of tailored menace moving like a closing trap. His men stayed seated. They didn't need to stand. The room belonged to him now. He crossed the checkered floor without hurry. Stopped between Penny and the laughing heiress. The silence was so complete Penny heard cream dripping from her apron onto the tiles. John reached out 2 fingers, gentle under her chin, and tilted her face up. His thumb brushed a smear of whipped cream from her cheek, slow, almost tender. His eyes, storm gray and unreadable, held hers for one heartbeat longer than necessary. Then he turned to May. The temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees. Put the phone down, he said, voice quiet enough to stop hearts. And apologize. May's smile flickered. Her friends went pale. No one in Ridgeview Diner moved. No one even breathed. Penny stood clutching the edge of a booth, pulse hammering, staring at the man who had just drawn a line in blood no one else dared cross, and wondering if she had just been saved. Or marked forever. Penny stood frozen between the booths, whipped cream cooling into a sticky second skin, the diner's silence pressing against her eardrums like water after a dive. John A. Hall's words still hung in the air, low, lethal, final. May's phone trembled in her manicured hand. For one impossible second, the heiress looked small, cornered, human. Then the spell cracked. May's friends scrambled first, knocking over chairs, designer bags swinging like shields. May herself backed away, chin high but eyes wide, phone clutched to her chest as if it could protect her. The bell above the door gave its weak, metallic cry as they spilled out into the night. The diner exhaled. Conversations restarted in nervous bursts. Someone laughed too loud, then choked it off. A trucker in the corner whispered, "Jesus, that was John Hall," like he was naming the devil himself. John didn't watch them leave. His attention was on Penny. Those storm-gray eyes flicked once to the mess on her apron, once to the tremor in her hands, then back to her face. "You're all right," he said, not a question, a statement, as if he could make it true by deciding it was. He reached into his suit jacket, pulled out a crisp fold of hundreds, and set it on the nearest table without looking. More money than Penny made in a week of double shifts. Then he was gone, his men rising in perfect sync, the door jingling again, the black SUVs outside purring to life and vanishing into the dark. Penny didn't move until the taillights disappeared. Only then did her knees buckle. She caught the edge of a booth, breath hitching. A regular Mrs. Delgado, 70 years old, always ordered decaf and pie, pressed a wad of napkins into her hand. "Clean yourself up, mija, you're shaking." She did. In the cracked bathroom mirror, she looked like a crime scene. Whipped cream drying in her hair, mascara streaking, eyes too wide. She scrubbed until her skin burned, changed into the spare uniform in her locker, and finished the shift on autopilot. By the time the sky turned dishwater gray and the breakfast crowd trickled in, the incident already felt like a fever dream. Except for the money still sitting on table 8, and the way no one would quite meet her eyes. She should have known it wasn't over. 4:17 a.m. Penny's phone buzzed on the counter of her studio apartment, screen lighting the peeling wallpaper like a flare. She was halfway out of her shoes, bone-tired, ready to collapse face first into the mattress that doubled as her couch. The notification was from TikTok. Then another. Then a flood. She opened the app. The video was already at 1.2 million views. The caption: "Unhinged waitress attacks customer after being asked for extra napkins? Psycho behavior." It started mid-scene. Clever cuts. Penny's face twisted in rage, actually the moment she'd flinched when the plate hit her, then a jump cut to her stepping forward as if lunging. May's voice, sweet and trembling. "I was just asking for napkins, oh my god." Another edit. John's silhouette rising like a movie villain, his words distorted and overlaid with dramatic music. The final frame froze on his hand near Penny's chin, captioned in screaming yellow, "Is this assault?" Comments poured in like acid. "She should be in jail." "Typical broke trash, thinking she's tough." "That guy needs to be locked up threatening a girl." "Found her at, let's make her famous." Someone had already doxed her. Full name. The diner's address. Her ancient Instagram with 12 followers. Penny's stomach lurched. She dropped the phone like it was on fire. It kept buzzing on the carpet, relentless. By the time she dragged herself back to Ridgeview at 10 for the morning shift, the parking lot was packed with cars she didn't recognize, phones pointed at the door like rifles. Her manager, Carl 52, perpetually sweaty, cheap toupee sliding with every frantic gesture, met her at the staff entrance. Penny, thank God. Look, we gotta talk. Inside, the diner looked normal. Same cracked booths, same burnt coffee smell. But every customer stared. Some filmed openly. Carl pulled her into the cramped office that smelled of old fries and desperation. I've had 17 calls since 6 a.m. corporate. News stations. Some lawyer saying the Navarro family is evaluating options. He wiped his forehead with a rag. They want you off the schedule. Indefinitely. Paid leave, they said, but we both know what that means. Penny heard the words, but they floated past her, muffled. Carl, the video it's edited. She threw food on me. I know, kid, I was here. But the Navarros. He lowered his voice to a whisper. They own the mortgage on this place. They own half the mortgages in town. I got grandkids. She walked out numb. The breakfast crowd parted for her like she was contagious. A teenage girl in a corner booth live-streamed, whispering, "That's her, that's the crazy waitress." Penny kept moving until she was outside, morning sun harsh on her skin, air tasting like exhaust and panic. Her phone hadn't stopped. Death threats now mixed with the hate. Someone had photoshopped her face onto prison mugshots. Someone else started a GoFundMe. Help May Navarro heal from violent assault. It was already at $87,000. Across town, in a penthouse office of smoked glass and black marble, John A. Hall watched the same video on a wall of screens. No sound. Just the loop of Penny's humiliated face, the jump cuts, the lies. His city intelligence chief, Victor, stood at parade rest beside the desk. Edited on a phone, uploaded within 20 minutes of them leaving the diner, Victor said. May Navarro posted it herself, then handed it to a crisis PR firm out of D.C. They've got bots pushing it. Top comment sections are 80% paid. John didn't blink. His fingers rested on the desk still, controlled, but the muscle in his jaw flexed once. Full footage from the diner? Recovering it now. Ridgeview's system is ancient, but we own the company that services it. John nodded once. The movement was small, but Victor took a half step back anyway. He had seen that particular stillness before. It usually preceded bodies in the river. Find out what the Navarros are planning, John said, voice flat. Lawyers, media buys, police pressure, everything. Victor hesitated. This could get loud, boss. The old man still has friends on the council. John finally looked away from the screen. His eyes were winter. Then we get louder. Back in her apartment, Penny sat on the floor with her knees to her chest, phone on silent but the screen still lighting up like a strobe. She had 4,837 new followers on Instagram. Every single one of them hated her. Her inbox was a sewer dick pics, threats, people offering to teach her manners. She called in sick to nowhere. Texted her one friend from community college. No reply. She opened the freezer, stared at the half-frozen vodka bottle she kept for emergencies, and realized this qualified. 3 shots in, the shaking stopped. 4 shots in, the tears started. She cried the way she hadn't since she was 16, and her mother overdosed in the trailer bathroom, ugly, snotty, hopeless sobs that tore out of her like they'd been waiting years for permission. At some point, she fell asleep on the carpet, cheek against the rough weave, phone battery finally dead beside her. She woke to pounding. Not on her door, on the building. Chants from the street below. She crawled to the window, peeked through the blinds. 20, maybe 30 people on the sidewalk, signs scrawled in marker. Justice for May. Fire the sicko waitress. Someone had a bullhorn. Her landlord's voice carried up the stairwell, minutes later, panicked, yelling into his phone. I don't care whose daughter she pissed off. I can't have protests at my property. Penny pressed her back to the wall and slid down again. The room smelled like vodka and terror. She wrapped her arms around her knees and whispered the only thing that still felt real. I didn't do anything wrong. Across the city, John closed the last file. Victor had brought him bank records, shell companies, city contracts signed in Navarro blood. He set it down gently, the way a surgeon sets down a scalpel before cutting. Then he picked up his phone and made one call. Start with the footage, he said. Then we burn their world down, piece by piece. Nobody touches her again. He hung up, stood at the floor-to-ceiling window, and watched the sun bleed out over his city. Far below, traffic crawled like ants. Somewhere in that maze, Penny M. Nelson was curled up on a floor, thinking she was alone. She wasn't. Not anymore. The war had already begun. She just didn't know it yet. 3 nights later, Ridgeview Diner was a tomb. The neon open sign had been switched off hours ago. The last drunk had been poured into an Uber, the floors mopped twice, the coffee urns scrubbed until they gleamed under the sickly fluorescence. Penny moved through the empty space like a ghost, untying her apron with fingers that had finally stopped shaking. The hate hadn't slowed. If anything, it had metastasized. Her phone was dead in her locker because she couldn't bear another notification. The GoFundMe for May was closing in on $500,000. Someone had mailed a box of actual human shit to the diner addressed to Psycho Penny. Carl had cried when he opened it. She had come in anyway, because the alternative was sitting alone in her apartment, listening to the protesters chant outside her window. At least here, she could keep her hands busy. 1:47 a.m. She was counting till her last official duty before Carl let her go for her own safety, when the front door rattled. Once. Twice. The lock turned with a key she didn't know existed. 2 men stepped inside. The first was tall, gym-built, hair slicked back like a 1982 Wall Street villain. The second was shorter, thicker, neck disappearing into the collar of a charcoal suit that cost more than the diner's monthly rent. Both wore the same bored, professional menace she'd seen on John's Men, only colder. Corporate predators, not street ones. Slick hair flipped the deadbolt behind them. The click echoed. Penny Nelson, he said, voice smooth as expensive scotch. We're here to help you make this go away. Penny's pulse spiked so hard she tasted metal. She backed up until the counter pressed into her spine. We're closed. The shorter one smiled without warmth. We're not customers. He reached inside his jacket and produced a slim leather folder. From it, he slid a single sheet of heavy cream paper and a Mont Blanc pen. Simple statement. You admit the incident at the diner was a staged publicity stunt between you and Mr. Hall. You approached Miss Navarro first. You threw the dessert yourself for clicks. You'll apologize publicly, pay Miss Navarro $100,000 in damages, and this all disappears. The video dies. The donors stop caring. You get to keep breathing without looking over your shoulder. Penny stared at the paper like it was written in poison. I'm not signing that. Slick hair sighed, the way a parent does when a child refuses vegetables. Everyone has a price, Penny. We're authorized to go up to $250. Think about it. New life, new city. No more grease under your fingernails. She laughed sharp, cracked, terrified. You people are insane. That video is a lie. Everyone in this room saw. No one will testify. The short one cut in. Half the regulars that night have already received visits. The security footage had an unfortunate malfunction. And your boss? He tilted his head toward Carl's office. He's got 3 DUIs the DA was kind enough to forget. Be a shame if those resurfaced. Penny's knees went weak. She gripped the counter to stay upright. The taller man stepped closer. Cologne and threat. Sign it, or we move to Plan B. And what's Plan B? He didn't answer. just reached for her wrist the same way May had reached for the plate 3 nights ago and twisted until the bones ground together. Pain shot up her arm like fire. The pen was forced between her fingers. Initial here, he murmured, pressing the tip to the dotted line. And here. She tried to pull away. Couldn't. Her vision tunneled. Breath came in short, animal gasps. This was how it ended alone. After closing, bones snapped over a lie printed on Navarro letterhead. Then, she heard it. A soft, metallic click behind them. The front door, the one they just locked, eased open an inch. Cold night air slipped in, carrying the faint scent of rain on asphalt. The 2 men froze. John A. Hall stepped inside. He wore the same steel gray suit from the night everything ignited, but the knot in his tie was looser now, the top button undone like a man who'd been working late on things that didn't involve boardrooms. His expression was perfectly blank, the kind of blank that made the air feel suddenly thin. He closed the door behind him with 2 fingers. Didn't bother locking it. He didn't need to. The man holding Penny's wrist loosened his grip, a fraction, uncertainty flickering across his face for the first time. John didn't speak at first. He simply looked at the paper on the counter, at the red marks blooming on Penny's skin, at the 2 men who suddenly seemed smaller than they had 30 seconds ago. Then, so quietly the words barely disturbed the air. Take your hand off her. 4 words. No inflection. No volume. But the shorter man released her so fast she stumbled. The pen clattered to the floor. John didn't move from the doorway. He didn't need to. The space between them was already his. Slick hair recovered first, forcing a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Mr. Hall, this is a private matter. John tilted his head a fraction. The taller man took 1 involuntary step back. John finally walked forward slow, measured, shoes silent on the checkered tile. He stopped an arm's length from them, close enough that they could see the complete absence of anything human in his eyes. You work for Rafael Navarro, he said. Not a question. The shorter one swallowed. We're independent counsel. You're messengers. John's gaze flicked to the paper, then back up. And your message has been received. He reached into his inside pocket. Both men flinched. John withdrew, not a gun, but a phone. He tapped once. The screen lit with a still image security footage time-stamped 3 nights ago. The unedited version. May shoving the plate, Penny flinching. Every ugly second in crystal clarity. He turned the screen so they could see. I have 12 more angles, he said conversationally. Plus, the original memory cards. And the technician who lost them owes me his life. Twice. Silence stretched, thin and brittle. John slipped the phone away. Go back to Rafael Navarro, he said. Tell him the price for touching her just went up. Tell him the next messenger who lays a finger on Penny Nelson leaves in a bag, and tell him if he wants to negotiate, he calls me directly. Like a man. The taller one opened his mouth, maybe to argue, maybe to threaten. John looked at him. Just looked. The man closed his mouth. They left without another word. The bell gave its pathetic jingle as the door swung shut behind them. Penny's legs finally gave out. She slid down the front of the counter until she was sitting on the cold floor, wrist cradled to her chest, tears coming hard and soundless. John crouched in front of her, close enough that she could smell the faint trace of his cologne, something dark and expensive and dangerous. Let me see, he said softly. She let him take her hand. His fingers were careful, clinical, turning her wrist to check the damage. Bruises already blooming purple. It's not broken, he murmured. But it will hurt tomorrow. She laughed through the tears, wet, broken. Everything hurts tomorrow. He didn't smile. Didn't offer platitudes. Instead, he reached into his pocket again, produced a silk handkerchief, and pressed it gently to her cheeks, wiping the tears the way he'd wiped whipped cream nights ago. Penny looked up at him, really looked. Up close, the controlled mask slipped just enough to reveal something raw underneath. Fury, yes, but something older. Protective, possessive. "Why are you doing this?" she whispered. John's thumb brushed her cheekbone, feather-light. "Because someone should have stood between you and the world a long time ago." He held her gaze. "I'm late, but I'm here now." He helped her to her feet. The diner felt cavernous around them, shadows stretching long under the buzzing lights. "This won't stop," he said. "Not tonight, not tomorrow. The Navarros don't lose gracefully, and now I've embarrassed them publicly." Penny wrapped her arms around herself. "Then what happens?" John's eyes darkened. "I handle it." He said it like he was stating the weather. Inevitable. Absolute. He guided her toward the door, one hand barely touching the small of her back, gentle, but she felt the claim in it anyway. Outside, the night was cold and quiet. 2 black SUVs idled at the curb. One of his men opened the back door without a word. Penny hesitated on the threshold. "My shift is over," John finished. "You're not coming back here alone, not until this is finished." She looked back at the diner, at the life she'd scraped together, table by table, tip by tip, and felt something inside her crack wide open. John waited. No pressure, no rush. But the choice had already been made the moment he walked through that door. Penny stepped into the night. The SUV door closed behind her with a soft, expensive thud. As they pulled away, Ridgeview Diner shrank in the rear window, neon flickering once, twice, then going dark. The war John A. Hall had promised was no longer coming. It had arrived. The first brick came through her bedroom window at 2:13 a.m. Penny heard the whistle of it cutting air a split second before glass exploded inward like frozen lightning. She was already on the floor she'd taken to, sleeping there because the mattress was too close to the wall that faced the street. The brick landed with a dull thud on her pillow, wrapped in printer paper that fluttered open like a white flag of surrender. Scrawled in red Sharpie. "Die. Lying whore." She didn't scream. She'd stopped screaming 2 days ago. Instead, she crawled on elbows and knees to the kitchenette, pressed her back to the lower cabinets, and waited for the next one. It never came. Just voices outside, male, drunk, laughing, then tires peeling away. Her phone was in her hand before she remembered picking it up. 47 missed calls. Hundreds of new DMs. Someone had posted her exact address on a Justice for May subreddit an hour ago. The post had 12K upvotes and a pinned comment. "Let's show this psycho what real assault feels like." She sat there until dawn bled gray through the broken window, knees to chest, counting heartbeats instead of sheep. By noon, the hallway outside her door smelled like piss and spray paint. Someone had written "cunt" in foot-tall letters across the cheap wood. Management had stopped answering the phone. Her landlord texted once. "New locks are your responsibility." Penny hadn't eaten in 36 hours, hadn't slept in longer. She kept the lights off and the curtains drawn and jumped every time the building creaked. She was packing a single duffel, 3 uniforms, 2 pairs of jeans, the photograph of her mother before the drugs when the knock came. Not a knock. A command in 3 measured taps. She froze, hand on the deadbolt she no longer trusted. "Penny." John A. Hall's voice, low and unmistakable through the thin door. "Open up, we're out of time." She looked through the peephole. He filled the distorted fisheye lens, completely steel gray coat open, collar sharp, no tie tonight. Behind him, 4 men in black tactical jackets stood with the stillness of statues. 2 matte black SUVs idled at the curb below, hazards blinking like slow red warnings. Penny's fingers shook so badly she could barely work the chain. The door opened 6 inches. "I'm fine," she lied automatically. John's eyes took in everything in one sweep. The broken window taped with cardboard, the graffiti bleeding through the door, the duffel half-sipped on the floor. Her face that hadn't seen makeup or sleep in days. "You're not fine," he said. "Not angry, just stating fact. You're coming with me." She laughed thin, hysterical. "I'm not your problem, John. You already did more than anyone." He pushed the accusations aside with a look. "Your address is on every hate forum from here to Toronto. There's a Telegram channel with 2,000 members coordinating shifts to watch this building. One of them has a gun and a rape fantasy he's very excited to describe in detail." He let that land. "You stay here another hour, you won't leave upright." Penny's breath hitched. She hated how easily the tears came now. "I don't have anywhere else," she whispered. "You do now." He didn't wait for permission. He stepped inside, invading the tiny space with his size and his certainty, and crouched to zip her duffel himself. The movement was gentle, almost tender, but the message was iron. Decision made. Penny backed up until her shoulders hit the fridge. "You can't just decide my life." John straightened slowly. Up close, the hallway light carved shadows under his cheekbones made his eyes look black instead of gray. "I'm not deciding your life," he said. "I'm keeping you alive long enough for you to decide it yourself. There's a difference." One of his men appeared in the doorway, murmured something low. John's jaw flexed. "They're 2 blocks out," the man said. "Group of 8. Baseball bats and cameras." John didn't look away from her. "Clock's ticking, Penny." She stared at the duffel in his hand, her entire existence reduced to one battered bag, and felt something inside her chest crack wide open. "I don't even know you," she said, voice small. "You know I don't bluff." He held out the bag like an offering. "And you know what happens if you stay." The sound of shouting drifted up from the street, distant but coming closer. Chance. Her name twisted into something ugly. Penny took the bag with trembling fingers. Their hands brushed. His skin was warm, hers was ice. "That's my girl," he murmured so softly she almost missed it. They moved fast after that. Down the stairwell that reeked of urine and fresh paint. Out the back exit where another SUV waited. John kept one hand on the small of her back the entire time, guiding, shielding, claiming. She hated how safe it made her feel. The ride was silent, except for the low growl of the engine and the city sliding past tinted windows. Penny stared at her reflection in the glass. Hollow cheeks, bruised shadows under her eyes, hair that hadn't been washed in days. She looked like someone who'd already lost. John sat beside her, one arm stretched along the back of the seat, not quite touching her, but close enough she felt the heat of him. "Where are we going?" she finally asked. "One of my buildings. Top 3 floors are private. You'll have the penthouse." Penny laughed again, wet, incredulous. "The penthouse. Of course." He didn't smile. "No one gets up without my say, so." Cameras, biometrics, 2 teams on rotation. The Navarros couldn't buy their way past the lobby with a nuke. She turned to him. "And what does it cost me?" His eyes met hers, storm gray and unreadable. "Nothing you haven't already paid." The building was downtown, all glass and black steel, the kind of place that didn't have a name on the door because the people who belonged there already knew. They took a private elevator that required John's handprint and a code. Penny watched the numbers climb past 50, 55, 60, until the doors slid open directly into the apartment. It wasn't an apartment, it was a different planet. Floor-to-ceiling windows with the city spread out like a toy below. White marble floors that reflected the recessed lights like moonlight on water. A kitchen bigger than her old apartment, all matte black and brushed gold. Fresh flowers, white orchids on a table that probably cost more than she'd made in a year. John set her duffel down like it belonged there. It looked pathetic against the opulence. "Bedroom's through there," he said, nodding toward a hallway. "Bathroom has a tub you could swim in. Fridge is stocked. Closet has clothes in your size, don't ask how I know." Penny walked to the window because her legs needed to move. Far below, traffic crawled like blood through veins. Up here the world felt muffled, distant. Safe. She hated how much she needed safe. Behind her, John's voice was quiet. "You're angry." She spun. "You think?" He didn't flinch. "Be angry at me. Not at yourself for accepting help. I don't want to owe you." "You don't." He took one step closer. "This isn't a loan, Penny. It's not a transaction. I'm not keeping score." "Then what is it?" Her voice cracked on the last word. John looked at her for a long moment. Something raw flickered across his face, gone before she could name it. "It's me deciding the world doesn't get to break you tonight." He closed the distance slowly, giving her every chance to step back. She didn't. "Or any night I can prevent." He was close enough now that she had to tilt her head to meet his eyes. Close enough to see the faint scar that cut through his left eyebrow. Close enough to smell the faint trace of gun oil and winter air that clung to his coat. His hand lifted slow, deliberate, and brushed a strand of hair from her cheek. The touch was feather-light, but it burned. "You're not safe alone," he said, voice rougher now. "You stay where I can protect you." Penny's heart slammed against her ribs. Fear, yes. Exhaustion. But something else coiled low in her stomach, something that terrified her more than the mob outside ever could. "And if I say no?" she whispered. John's thumb traced the line of her jaw, just once. "Then I stand outside your door until you change your mind, or until hell freezes. Whichever comes first." His hand dropped. He stepped back, giving her space she suddenly didn't want. "The place is yours as long as you need it," he said. "No cameras inside the apartment. No guards past the elevator unless you ask. You want me gone, say the word and I'm gone." He turned to leave. "John." He paused in the doorway, looked back. Penny hugged herself, suddenly aware of how small she felt in this vast, expensive silence. "Thank you," she said. The words tasted like surrender. He nodded once. "Get some sleep, Penny." The elevator doors closed behind him with a soft hiss. She was alone in the penthouse safe for the first time in weeks, and the silence pressed down like water. Penny walked to the bedroom on legs that barely worked. The bed was the size of her old living room, dressed in white linens that smelled like clean snow. She didn't bother with the lights, just kicked off her shoes, crawled fully clothed between sheets that cost more than her rent, and finally let the tears come. She cried for the girl who'd once believed hard work was enough. For the apartment with the broken window and the death threats painted on the walls. For the way John A. Hall looked at her like she was something worth burning cities over. And somewhere between the sobs and the darkness pulling her under, she realized the most terrifying truth of all. Part of her had wanted him to stay. 48 hours. That was how long John A. Hall gave the city to forget Penny Nelson existed. He didn't sleep. He didn't raise his voice. He simply sat at the long black marble table in the war room 2 floors below the penthouse, sleeves rolled to the elbow, coffee going cold beside a stack of drives and burner phones. The screens in front of him glowed with spreadsheets, wire transfers, shell companies nested inside shell companies like Russian dolls made of blood money. Victor stood behind him, voice quiet. Navarro Sr.'s been laundering through the port development bonds for 9 years. Kickbacks from 3 councilmen, 2 judges, and the deputy mayor. We have the signatures. We have the offshore accounts. We have the photos of the envelopes. John didn't look up. The land grabs? 47 properties. Mostly South Side. Elderly holdouts threatened, hospitals mysteriously redlined, nursing homes condemned the week after Navarro's holding company bought the block for pennies. One old woman died of a heart attack the night they cut her power. They still bulldozed her house with her cat inside. John's pen stopped moving. For 3 heartbeats, the room was perfectly still. Then he closed the folder. Send it. Not to the police. Not to the FBI. To 6 investigative journalists who owed him favors that could never be repaid, and 1 junior reporter at the Times who still believed in truth more than job security. Anonymous drops. Encrypted, untraceable. A single line in each email. For the waitress. At 3:17 a.m., he walked upstairs. Penny was awake he'd known she would be. She sat on the wide leather couch in one of his white dress shirts, and nothing else, knees pulled to her chest, staring at the black city beyond the glass like it might bite. The shirt swallowed her, sleeves rolled 4 times, hem brushing mid-thigh. Her hair was damp from the shower. She'd finally used the tub. He didn't speak. Just handed her a tablet. The screen was paused on a frame she recognized too well, May's manicured hand shoving the plate forward, her own face flinching in anticipation. Crystal clear. Untouched. Penny's breath caught. Where did you? Doesn't matter. John sat on the opposite end of the couch, giving her space she both wanted and hated. In 40 minutes, this goes live on every major platform at once. Full footage. No cuts. Time-stamped. With metadata. She stared at him. They'll know it was you. They'll suspect. They'll never prove. His voice was winter calm. By tomorrow night, May Navarro will be the most hated woman in America, and her father will be too busy saving himself to remember your name. Penny looked back at the frozen image, May's smile sharp as broken glass, and something inside her chest cracked open like ice on a thawing river. John stood. Get some rest. He was almost to the hallway when her voice stopped him. John. He turned. She was crying. Not the broken sobs from the safehouse floor. These were quieter, relieved, dangerous. Thank you, she whispered. He gave the smallest nod, then disappeared downstairs again. 6 a.m. The first bomb detonated on a local news site. Navarro Empire built on stolen homes, exclusive documents. By 6:12, the unedited diner video was trending worldwide. Number. Real diner video hit number 1. Number May Navarro ice over party number 2. Penny watched it happen from the couch, wrapped in a cashmere blanket that cost more than her first car. The footage played on every screen. May's voice, high and cruel, say hi to your 15 minutes, little servant. The plate slamming into Penny's chest, the laughter, then John rising like judgment itself. His voice, low and lethal. Put the phone down and apologize. The internet did not forgive. Old videos resurfaced, May drunk at charity galas calling staff the help, May shoving a bartender for a slow drink, May laughing as her friends poured champagne on a homeless man for content. The GoFundMe for her healing was reported en masse and frozen. Donors publicly apologized. Brands dropped her. Her verified check turned gray. By noon, the corruption stories broke nationally. CNN. Senator's largest donor implicated in massive money laundering scheme. Photos of city council members boarding private jets. Bank records. Audio of Rafael Navarro bragging about owning the zoning board. The Navarro family's press conference was scheduled for 4 p.m. They canceled at 3:58 when federal agents arrived at the estate with warrants. Penny couldn't stop watching. She sat cross-legged on the marble island in the kitchen, stealing bites of cold pizza one of John's men had left, refreshing Twitter like an addict. Every new post felt like oxygen. A video of May fleeing her apartment building, hoodie up, paparazzi screaming questions. Did you assault that waitress? Are you aware your father seized homes illegally? May tripped. Fell hard. Someone zoomed in on her tears. Penny should have felt triumph. Instead, she felt hollow. Then the tears came again, hot, unstoppable, nothing like the ones before. Relief so sharp it hurt. She didn't hear John come in. One moment, she was alone. The next, his reflection was in the window watching her cry with the city burning down behind her. He crossed the room slowly, stopped just short of touching her. I thought you'd be happy, he said quietly. I am. Her voice cracked. That's the problem. I'm happy someone's finally losing sleep because of what they did to me, and that makes me feel ugly. John reached up, brushed a tear from her jaw with his thumb. You're allowed to want justice, Penny. Doesn't make you them. She looked at him, really looked. The controlled mask was gone. Exhaustion etched faint lines around his eyes, but underneath was something fierce and bright. You did this, she said. All of it. I promised I would. Why? The question had haunted her for days. You don't know me. You could have walked away that night in the diner and no one would have blamed you. John's hand dropped to the counter, caging her in without touching. Because I've watched men like Rafael Navarro break people like you my entire life, and no one ever stood up. Not once. His voice roughened. I decided a long time ago that when I could stop it, I would. That night you looked at me like you'd already accepted the world was going to keep hitting you. I decided the world was done. Penny's breath trembled. The space between them shrank to inches. She could feel the heat coming off him, smell the faint trace of coffee and gunpowder that seemed to live in his skin now. And what do you want in return? She asked, barely a whisper. His eyes dropped to her mouth for a single heartbeat. Nothing you're not ready to give. He stepped back, deliberate, painful space, and the spell cracked. Eat something real, he said, nodding at the pizza box. Take a shower. Scream into a pillow if you need to. The city's going to be loud for days. He was almost to the door when she called out again. John. He paused. She slid off the counter, barefoot on cold marble, his shirt brushing her thighs. Walked to him slowly. Stood on her toes and pressed the softest kiss to the corner of his mouth, barely contact, gone almost before it happened. Thank you, she said against his skin, for giving me my life back. For the first time since she'd met him, John A. Hall looked unsteady. He didn't kiss her back. He simply rested his forehead against hers for 3 breaths, eyes closed, like he was memorizing the moment. Then he left her standing in the kitchen while the empire outside kept burning. By nightfall, May Navarro's verified accounts were gone. Her father's company stock had lost 43%. The FBI expanded their raid to 3 more properties. And in the penthouse 63 floors above the chaos, Penny M. Nelson fell asleep on a couch that faced the city, wrapped in a blanket and the absolute certainty that for the first time in her adult life, no one was coming through the door to hurt her. Downstairs, John poured 2 fingers of whiskey, stared at the monitors showing news anchors, saying the Navarro name like it was poison, and allowed himself one small, savage smile. Phase 1 was complete. The real war hadn't even started yet. The first week after the counterattack felt like the morning after a war. The smoke still rising, the streets too quiet, everyone waiting for the next explosion. Penny woke each day expecting the nightmare to have reset itself. Instead, she found fresh clothes laid out, her exact size, tags still on, breakfast waiting under silver domes, the city 63 floors below looking smaller every sunrise. She wandered the penthouse like a ghost who hadn't been told she was dead yet. She watched the Navarro name dragged across every channel, every podcast, every subreddit. She watched May's verified checkmarks disappear one by one. She watched Rafael Navarro's lawyer hold a press conference where he aged 10 years in 10 minutes. And for 7 perfect days, no one knocked on her door with hate in their hands. Then the 8th day came. It started with a notification on the new phone John had left on the nightstand burner, untraceable, only 3 numbers saved. The screen lit up with an unknown number and a photo attachment. She opened it before her brain caught up. A legal summons. Navarro v. Nelson. Civil complaint, defamation, intentional infliction of emotional distress, harassment, stalking, conspiracy to commit extortion. Demand. $25 million. Plus a permanent restraining order. Penny read it 3 times before the words stopped swimming. A second message followed, from the same number. See you in court, psycho. This time Daddy can't buy the judge fast enough. She dropped the phone like it burned. 2 hours later, the process server arrived. The lobby of John's building looked like a fortress designed by someone with paranoia and unlimited money. Black marble, retinal scanners, 2 armed guards who looked ex-Spetsnaz. The man in the cheap suit still managed to talk his way past the front desk with a story about delivering flowers for Miss Nelson. The guards escorted him all the way to the private elevator, rode up with him, and stood behind him while he handed Penny the thick envelope in person. She took it with fingers that wouldn't stop shaking. The man smiled the way a shark smiles. You've been served. The elevator doors closed on his face and she was alone again, envelope heavy as a brick in her hands. That night, May went live on every platform that hadn't banned her yet, tear-streaked, voice trembling, hoodie 2 sizes too big, looking every inch the broken 23-year-old. I just wanted to apologize to my supporters, she whispered to 3 million viewers. I've been silent because powerful men have been silencing me. Yes, I made a mistake at that diner. I was drunk. I was showing off. I'm not proud. But what happened after being doxxed, having my family destroyed, death threats, suicide bait, it's too much. I'm the real victim here. Chat exploded with crying emojis and donations. She held up the summons like a holy relic. This waitress and her boyfriend, they orchestrated everything. I have proof. I'm taking them to court so the truth can finally come out. Penny watched it on the massive television with the sound low, curled on the couch in John's shirt again because nothing else felt real. May looked straight into the camera, eyes red but steady. Penny Nelson, if you're watching, see you in court. I hope you have a good lawyer. Penny muted the TV. The silence rushed in like water filling a sinking ship. She didn't hear John come in. One moment the apartment was empty, the next he was there, coat still dusted with night air, reading the summons in one glance. Penny couldn't look at him. $25 million, she said to the floor. I don't have $25, John. He set the papers down with deliberate calm. You're not paying her a cent. They'll freeze everything. They'll drag me through discovery, depositions. They'll make me relive every second. They won't get that far. She finally met his eyes. You can't stop a civil suit, even you can't. I can make it disappear. How? John's smile was small and terrible. The same way I made everything else disappear. Penny wrapped her arms around herself. The tears came fast this time, angry and exhausted. I thought it was over, she whispered. I thought I won. John crossed the room in 3 strides and pulled her into his arms without asking. She resisted for half a second, then collapsed against his chest, fists clenched in his shirt, sobbing like the night he'd carried her out of her old life. His hand stroked her hair, slow and steady. I said I'd end this, he murmured against her temple. I don't break my word. She cried until there was nothing left, until his shirt was soaked and her throat raw. When she pulled back, his eyes were darker than she'd ever seen them. "Sleep," he ordered softly. "Tomorrow we remind them who they declared war on." His name was Travis Reed. 6'2" of bad decisions and bourbon breath. Fists that knew exactly where her ribs were softest. A smile that used to make her believe love was supposed to hurt. Penny hadn't seen him in 4 years, not since the night she'd crawled out the trailer window with a split lip and $53 in her bra. She'd changed her number, her city, her name on every form that didn't require ID. She'd thought distance was the same as disappearance. She was wrong. He found her because someone on a hate forum had dug deep enough old yearbook photos, court records from when he'd violated the restraining order the first time, a grainy photo of her at 17 with a black eye she'd lied about to the ER nurse. They posted it with the caption, "Psycho, Penny's psycho ex confirms she's always been a liar." Travis saw opportunity the way a shark sees blood. He showed up drunk at 2:47 a.m., screaming her name in the private garage under John's building. Security caught him on camera staggering out of a rideshare, bottle in hand, roaring like a wounded animal. "Penny, you think you can hide up there with your new rich boyfriend? I know what you did, you fucking whore." The guards moved to intercept. John was already there. He'd been in the gym shirtless, wrapped hands, sweat still cooling on his skin when the alert came through. He took the stairs 3 at a time, arriving just as Travis started kicking the penthouse door hard enough to rattle the frame. Penny heard it from the bedroom. The sound of that voice, slurred, furious, familiar, hit her like a fist to the solar plexus. She froze halfway down the hall, barefoot, heartbeat roaring in her ears. Memories flooded in. The crack of his hand across her face, the way he'd cry after and promise never again, the smell of his sweat when he pinned her down. Another kick. Wood splintered. "Penny, open the fucking door." She couldn't move. Couldn't breathe. Then the door opened. Not from her side. John opened it. Travis raised his fist for another kick and found himself staring up at 6-3 of controlled, lethal calm. John didn't speak. He simply reached out, caught Travis by the throat with one hand, and slammed him backward into the opposite wall so hard the drywall cracked. Travis's feet left the ground. The bottle shattered somewhere far away. John leaned in, forearm crushing Travis's windpipe, face inches away. "You don't shout at her anymore," he said, voice so low it vibrated through bone. "You don't look for her anymore. You don't think about her anymore." Travis clawed at John's arm, face turning purple. John pressed harder. "If I hear you breathed her name again, I will find you. I will take you apart piece by piece and nail what's left to whatever trailer park still claims you. Do you understand me?" Travis managed a wet nod. John let go. Travis dropped, gasping, retching, piss staining the front of his jeans. John crouched, gripped Travis's hair, forced his head up. "Look at me." Travis did. "Say her name one more time, I dare you." Travis whimpered. John stood, disgust curling his lip. He turned to the 2 guards who had appeared silently behind him. "Dump him 3 states away. If he comes back, he doesn't leave breathing." They dragged Travis away by the arms. He didn't fight. John closed the door quietly, carefully, and turned to find Penny standing in the hallway, pale as paper, shaking so hard her teeth chattered. He crossed to her in 3 strides and pulled her against him. She buried her face in his bare chest, fingers digging into his back like she was drowning, and he was the only solid thing left. "I've got you," he whispered into her hair. "He's gone. He's never coming back." She cried then, the deep, ugly sobs that come from places you forgot existed. John held her through all of it, arms, iron bands around her, until she was empty. When it was over, He carried her to bed, tucked her in like something precious, and sat on the edge until her breathing evened out. Only then did he allow himself to shake with rage so cold it burned. 3 days later, John took her back. Not asked. Told. "You're not hiding anymore," he said over breakfast, voice final. "We finished this where it started." Penny wanted to argue. The thought of walking into that diner again made her stomach knot. But something in his eyes, pride, maybe, or belief that she was stronger than she felt, made her nod. They arrived at 8 p.m. on a Friday, the busiest shift. John drove himself. No security tail. Just the matte black Bentley that cost more than the diner's building, pulling up to the curb like a panther parking among alley cats. He got out first, walked around, opened her door. Offered his hand. Penny took it. She was wearing the armor he'd chosen, black jeans that fit like they were tailored, soft white sweater, hair down and shining, boots with a heel that made her feel tall. No apron. No name tag. No whipped cream stains. Cameras were already out before they crossed the sidewalk. The bell jingled as they stepped inside. Conversation died mid-sentence. Every booth, every stool, every tired trucker and night shift nurse turned to stare. Penny felt every gaze like needles. Then she lifted her chin. John's hand rested lightly on the small of her back, possession and protection in one touch. They walked the length of the diner slowly. Phones rose. No one tried to hide it. Carl grease-stained apron, eyes wide, came out from behind the counter. "Penny. Mr. Hall. Welcome back?" John didn't answer. He guided her to the exact booth where May and her friends had sat that night. The same booth 3 of May's former friends occupied now. They looked up, went pale. One of them, blonde, Chanel earrings, the girl who'd filmed everything, actually whimpered. "Ouch," John said quietly. They scrambled, knocking over ketchup bottles, leaving half-eaten plates. John held Penny's chair for her, then sat opposite, back to the wall, facing the room like a king surveying new territory. The diner was silent enough to hear the fryer hiss. Then Mrs. Delgado, the old woman who always ordered decaf, stood up from her stool, walked over, and placed a trembling hand on Penny's shoulder. "I'm sorry, Nisha," she said, voice cracking. "I laughed that night. I was wrong. Forgive an old woman." One by one, others followed. The trucker who'd whispered about John that first night. The waitress who'd taken her shifts. The cook who'd pretended not to see anything. Apologies. Some tearful. Some awkward. All real. Penny accepted each one with a nod, tears shining but never falling. When the last one walked away, John leaned forward. "Look around," he said softly. She did. Every phone was recording. Every eye was on her, not with hate now, but with something close to awe. Penny Nelson, the broke waitress who'd taken on an empire and won. She smiled, small at first, then real. For the first time in her life, the diner didn't feel like a cage. It felt like conquered ground. It ended the way empires always do, suddenly, completely, and in public. Federal indictments dropped on a Tuesday morning, sealed until the cameras were rolling outside the Navarro estate. Rafael Navarro was led out in cuffs, bathrobe flapping, face gray with shock. The charges read like a crime novel. RICO, wire fraud, money laundering, bribery, conspiracy, tax evasion, going back 23 years. By noon, his wife was on a private jet to a country with no extradition. By 3, May was arrested at a spa in Miami, screaming, mascara running, fighting the female agent who cuffed her for assault, defamation, perjury, and filing false police reports. The lawsuit against Penny? Dismissed with prejudice before lunch. The judge cited overwhelming evidence of fraud upon the court. The diner footage played on loop on every network, narrated now with context, the full story of a spoiled heiress and the man who ended her dynasty to protect one forgotten waitress. Penny watched the arrests from the penthouse couch, wrapped in John's arms, a glass of champagne gone flat hours ago. When May's mugshot flashed on screen, orange jumpsuit, no makeup, eyes swollen, Penny felt nothing. Not triumph. Not pity. Just the quiet click of a door finally closing. John's lips brushed her temple. It's over. She turned in his arms, straddled his lap, cupped his face in both hands. No, she said softly. It's just beginning. She kissed him, then slow, deliberate, the first kiss she initiated. He let her set the pace, hands gentle on her hips, until she deepened it, and he answered with a hunger that stole her breath. Later, much later, they lay tangled in sheets that smelled like them both, city lights painting gold across their skin. John traced lazy circles on her bare back. You deserved better than what the world gave you, he murmured against her shoulder. I decided to change that. Penny smiled into his neck. And now? Now you decide what comes next. College. Travel. Your own restaurant. Anything. I'll make it happen. She propped herself up on one elbow, looked down at him, really looked. The most dangerous man she'd ever met, and the only one who'd ever made her feel safe. I want to stay, she said simply. With you. Something fierce and tender flashed across his face. Then stay. Outside, dawn crept over the skyline, pink and gold and new. Inside, Penny Nelson closed her eyes and for the first time in her entire life fell asleep without waiting for the next blow. Somewhere in the city, new threats were already forming. Old enemies watching. New scores to settle. But that was tomorrow. Tonight, she was safe. Tonight, she was his. And tomorrow, whatever it brought, they would face together.